All right. Let's modify the bushing that BJ sent us so that it's going to work like the original bushing that we're going to remove right now. This bushing, it's garbage, so we're going to just push it through without the hope of saving it. And then I'm going to go clean this up on my wire wheel out in the garage because it's got a lot of rust. You see this just disintegrates as I push it through. So that's that. Let's go clean this up on the wire wheel. Come back in, we'll have a nice surface in which to push our new bushing. And that's going to end up going from this to this in a few easy steps. I'll walk you through it. All right, the first modification is to open up the inside so that this rod, this pin, will fit through it. It won't fit through it now because, like I said, this bushing is designed to capture this type of groove. This doesn't have that type of groove. It has to go clean through. So the way you do that is you just chuck that up in your lathe and run a drill through it. If you don't have a lathe, you grab that smaller diameter in a pair of pliers. You get a twist drill and gently twist that drill through there to open it up so that it's 5/16 all the way through. I suppose if you had some way of chucking this in a vise, that would make it easy. This allows you to do it carefully so that you're not expanding that hole too much. You want this pin to fit through tightly. There we go. Now it fits all the way through. Second modification is to narrow it down, because you need this plus a small washer. I'll show you why you need this small washer. And then you need a metal washer like this. But you have to get it all so that you can get a cotter pin through that hole. So, first step is to thin this large flange down. The way I did it is a few passes on a rough piece of sandpaper. And I'm using this rod to just hold it in place. I'm not really pushing down on the rod. I'm just using it as something to keep it flat. And we're almost there. This has got to be 60 or 80 grit sandpaper. And yeah, we're about the thickness we need. Now, I just have to remove the rest of this and neck it down so that that neck portion will fit through this hole here. Right now, it's too large. I have to neck it down to about that size. I don't know if you can see that. And for that, I'll go over to my handy dandy lathe and just turn it down to the right diameter and cut it off at the right thickness. Let's go over to the lathe. Ha! Who am I kidding? I don't have a lathe. I got a basement workshop with a few basic hand tools. That's what we're going to work with. Got a drill. I've taken my bushing, slid it onto a 5/16 bolt, put on a couple of washers, tightened it down a bit with a nut, I'm going to chuck it in here. And I'm going to turn it down to the diameter we need. I'm going to use some plastic molding tools, otherwise known as a wood chisel. And I'm going to put it against the shaft on the trailing edge so that it doesn't catch and bind. You want to sneak up on the final dimension. You'd like it to fit tight in that hole in the bell crank. It's not going to be spinning. You want it to get stuck in there, so you want that clearance to be pretty tight. And the machinists, the experienced machinists in the audience are going to say, "But Bob, you're not going to get a perfect circle. The 3 lobes on that drill chuck are going to cause a wobble so that when you spin it down, it's going to make a kind of 3-lobe outer circumference of that." And I would say you are absolutely right. And it absolutely doesn't matter. Because all I need is the outer diameter of whatever I turn down, the outer lobes, to fit tightly into this hole. So if those 3 lobes deform a bit when I press it in, that's perfectly fine, as long as it's locked in place. So one more time should do it. One more time. Just take off the slightest little bit. See how that fits. Good. That's pretty tight. I could probably tap it on in there. But I don't want to tap it on in there yet. What I want to do, might be a little too tight. What I want to do is cut it down to size. I need it to just be the thickness of the flange that it is sliding into. So I'm going to have to cut all that extra off of there. And I'm going to do it, again, with my lathe. Now here's how I gauge how far down I have to cut. I take my flange into which, or the arm into which this bushing is going to fit. I put it up there. I make a mark. And that mark is where I put my utility knife to cut this down to roughly the right thickness. You'll see why in a second. It doesn't have to be perfect at this point in order for it to work. So I'll put that blade up against there. Here we go. I've cut that length off. Now I have my bushing. I'm going to be super fancy and chamfer the edges of that hole. And it's more or less concentric. Doesn't have to be perfect though. Just has to provide a surface for that arm to ride on. Clean up that edge a little bit with a file so it's going to fit into that hole easily. Maybe clear it out, make sure the inside hole is still 5/16. Yep. Use the edges of that flute on the drill as a reamer, a crude reamer. It's going to be better than what was on there before. And now Make sure it fits through this, and I want to make sure I'm putting it in the way it's going to go, because if I get it in there, I may not want to take it out again. Make sure the inside is still 5/16. If any high spots come up because of deformation from being stuck into that hole, I'll take those off now. And there we go. Nice, tight, slop-free fit. And I have space. I have space for a nylon bushing on this side and a washer. I'll put my cotter pin through there, and there'll be no slop. Now I just have to do that with the upper piece for the column shift linkage. Now I've drilled out the larger bushing from my Dorman kit to fit a 3/8 inch bolt. Of course, it's going to fit on that upper 3/8 inch shaft. Now I have to turn this down to the diameter of the hole in the arm that comes off the shift column, or the steering column. And that hole I measured to be 31/64 of an inch. So how do I achieve such precision? How am I going to measure whether I've cut it down to 31/64 of an inch? Well, I have my handy micrometer, and I'll open that up to the size of a gauge block or a 31/64 inch drill. And when this slips over that, I know it's the right size. I'm going to use my turning tool and just cut it down to size. Oh, now cutting it to thickness. That arm is 13/64 thick. Well, I got a 13/64 drill. That's how thick the cut has to be. All right. And there we go. Got a bushing. It's going to work in that upper link. Let me show you how it's going to fit. It's going to fit over there. I'm going to have one washer between it. Let me show you that washer. I have it over here. So I have that. I'll have this washer there. And since the original bushing was nylon on both sides, I have a nylon washer and then the metal washer and then the pin. And that will have no slop. So I'll just press that into the arm on my steering column for the shift lever, and that will retain it. That's not going anywhere. Now, time to lube everything up, put it all together, and put it back on the truck.